The moon was quiet. It had always been quiet. No birds, no rivers, no wind, only cold rock and dust stretching forever. Yet, deep beneath its surface, life remained. Sanctuary 09 stood as one of humanity's last shelters. It was a giant underground city built long ago after Earth fell. No one knew who first called it sanctuary, but the name stayed. The people here didn't talk much about Earth anymore. The pain was too great. The shame, even greater. Humanity had poisoned its home. Wars had finished what pollution started. So, the survivors escaped to the moon. Here, they built the sanctuaries to hide, to wait, and to pray. Darius Cade walked the steel corridors of Sanctuary 09 with heavy steps. His black boots echoed softly. He wore a gray security uniform. A small pistol hung on his belt, but it felt useless. If danger ever came, it would take more than a pistol to stop it. He passed rows of metal doors. Each door led to a home, a family, or a group of workers. The people here lived simple lives. They grew food in underground farms. They recycled air and water. They survived, but they also carried a deep fear. A fear Darius had come to understand. At the heart of Sanctuary 09 was a place called the Silent Chamber. It was not a normal room. It was ancient, built before the sanctuary itself. The chamber was round, its walls made of black stone. No one knew what kind of stone it was. Some said it wasn't even from Earth. In the center of the chamber stood a giant sealed door. Strange markings covered it. No one could read them. The monks who guarded the chamber called it silent. They said it was a weapon from Earth's final days. A weapon too dangerous to use. No one knew what lay behind the door. For centuries, the people treated the chamber like a place of worship. The monks wore long white robes. They burned small lamps filled with blue light. They whispered prayers of warning, not hope. Their leader, Elder Varric, always said the same words to anyone who asked. The greatest danger is not outside these walls. It sleeps beneath us, and we must never wake it. Darius had heard those words many times. Yet, part of him wondered if the real danger was ignoring what lay below. What if it could save them? What if it could protect them from enemies? But the monks never allowed such thoughts. They believed silent was death itself. Darius walked to the outer gates of the silent chamber. Two monks stood watch, their faces calm, but their eyes sharp. They nodded at him. He nodded back. There was nothing to say. He checked the security scanners beside the gate. Nothing. All clear. He turned and made his way back to the control center. The walls hummed with the soft sound of machines, keeping the sanctuary alive. Lights flickered on the panels. Darius scanned the screens, checking air levels, power flow, and outside sensors. Then, something strange happened. A small red dot blinked on the outer radar. Darius frowned. He tapped the screen. The dot was moving toward the sanctuary. It was far out, but it was real. No human ship had approached in years. No ship was scheduled. His heart beat faster. He pressed the intercom button. Control to outer watch. Report any traffic, he said. Silence. He tried again. Control to outer watch. Respond. Still nothing. Darius stood up. His hand rested on his pistol. His training told him this wasn't normal. He switched to the emergency channel. All security units, report to control. Possible contact. Repeat, possible contact. The monks had said the real danger was inside. But Darius now knew something was coming from outside. Something uninvited. He didn't know yet who or what it was. But the silence of the moon was about to break. Red warning lights flashed across the walls of Sanctuary 09. The soft hum of machines was now drowned out by the sharp sound of alarms. The people of the sanctuary froze in fear. Mothers grabbed their children. Workers dropped their tools. All eyes turned toward the steel ceilings, as if danger would burst through at any moment. Darius Cade stood in the control center, eyes fixed on the radar screen. The single red dot had multiplied into several. They moved in perfect formation, fast and direct. No signals, no warnings. Whoever they were coming without asking. He opened the public channel and spoke loud and clear. All citizens, report to safe zones. This is not a drill. Move quickly and stay calm. He turned to his team. Only 6 guards stood with him. That was all Sanctuary 09 had left for defense. Not soldiers, not an army, just 6 people with old rifles and small handguns. Darius knew it wasn't enough, but they had no choice. "With me," he ordered. They moved out of the control center and headed toward the outer gates. As they ran, the ground shook slightly beneath their feet. Darius paused. The shaking stopped after a second. He knew that kind of vibration. Something had landed on the surface. Big, heavy. They reached the observation deck. From there, they could see the outer camera feeds. Darius leaned in, his breath tight in his chest. The cameras showed strange dark shapes outside. Tall figures, long limbs, smooth armor. They moved without sound. Zephyrics. One of the guards whispered in fear. Darius had heard stories of them. The Zephyrics were an alien race. Cold, silent, perfect in their movements. No one had ever faced them in one. They didn't come to trade or talk. They came to take. And now they had come here. The feed showed one of them placing a device on the outer gate. It flashed once, then exploded. The blast sent dust and debris flying. The outer shell of the sanctuary had been breached. "Fall back to inner defense points," Darius ordered. "We hold them there." The guard nodded and moved quickly. Darius knew they couldn't stop the Zephyrics, but they could buy time for the families to hide deeper inside. As they reached the inner corridor, Darius saw the monks gathered in front of the silent chamber. Elder Varric stood tall, holding his staff. The other monks formed a circle around the sealed door. They began to chant softly. Their voices were steady, but there was fear in their eyes. Darius stopped and faced the elder. "They've breached the outer wall. We need to move you to safety," Darius said. Elder Varric shook his head. "Our place is here. We will not leave the chamber." Darius clenched his jaw. "They're coming for this door, aren't they?" The elder's eyes darkened. "Yes. They seek silent. They have searched for it across the stars. Now that they have found it." Darius felt a chill run through him. "What is it they want from it?" Elder Varric looked down, as if the words hurt him. "They believe silent holds the power to wipe out all life. Not just ours. All life in the galaxy." Before Darius could speak again, another blast shook the corridor. Dust fell from the ceiling. The Zephyrics were inside. "Positions!" Darius shouted. The guards raised their weapons. Darius took cover behind a support beam. The monks kept chanting, standing between the invaders and the chamber door. The first Zephyrics appeared at the end of the hallway. Tall, black armor, no eyes, no mouth, just a smooth faceplate. It carried a long blade in one hand and a strange energy weapon in the other. More followed behind it. Darius fired first. The hallway lit up with flashes of light as bullets and energy blasts filled the air. But the Zephyrics moved fast. Too fast. They dodged the shots and advanced without fear. One guard fell, then another. Darius kept firing, but the Zephyrics kept coming. He grabbed his last grenade, pulled the pin, and threw it. The blast knocked several aliens back, but more replaced them. They pushed through the defense line with ease. "Fall back," Darius yelled. The few remaining guards pulled back to the silent chamber gate. The monks still stood firm. Elder Varric raised his staff high and shouted, "You shall not pass." But the lead Zephyrics raised its energy blade and struck him down. The other monks fell one by one. Darius fired until his weapon clicked empty. He knew he couldn't stop them. Not like this. The Zephyrics placed another device on the chamber door. It beeped once, twice, 3 times. Then, with a loud crack, the first seal broke. The strange markings on the door began to glow faintly. The aliens had opened the first lock. Darius stood frozen for a second, watching the light spread across the door. Fear gripped his heart. He had to retreat, but his mind screamed to fight on. "We can't stop them here," Darius whispered to himself. He turned and ran with the last 2 guards. They disappeared into the dark tunnels, leaving the chamber in the hands of the invaders. The door had begun to wake. Darius Cade slammed his fist against the wall as the heavy security door sealed shut behind him. He breathed hard. Sweat ran down his face. His heart felt like it was pounding out his chest. He had failed. The monks were dead. The chamber had been breached. The Zephyrics were inside. The 2 guards with him, Owen and Juno, stood silently. Their faces were pale. Their hands shook slightly as they gripped their empty rifles. Both knew the truth now. Their weapons were useless. The enemy was too fast, too strong. What do we do now? Owen asked, his voice shaking. Darius didn't answer right away. He leaned against the wall and closed his eyes for a moment. His mind raced. They had to do something. But what? Then he remembered something. Follow me, Darius said firmly. He led them down a side tunnel, away from the chamber. The lights flickered above them. Dust floated through the air. The ground shook again, softer this time but steady. Darius knew that shaking. The chamber was waking. Silent was stirring. They reached a locked maintenance door. Darius typed a code on the panel. The door slid open with a hiss. Behind it was an old storage room filled with dust-covered boxes and unused machines. Darius went straight to the back wall. He reached up and pulled down a rusted panel, revealing a hidden data terminal. It was old, its screen cracked, but still working. He typed in a second code, one he had learned years ago, but never used. The screen lit up with a soft green glow. What is this place? Juno asked. Records room, Darius replied. Hidden during the last war on Earth. Only a few of us knew about it. The screen showed files marked Project Silent. Darius opened the first file. Lines of simple text appeared. Owen and Juno leaned in to read. Project Silent, humanity's final reset tool. Darius kept reading aloud. Designed as a living artificial mind. Not a weapon of war, but a planetary eraser. It consumes all energy, organic and synthetic. Leaves nothing behind. Cleans a world completely for future rebuilding. Juno's eyes widened. It's not just a weapon, it's a world killer. Darius nodded slowly. That's why the monks feared it. It wasn't made to win wars. It was made to end worlds. Owen swallowed hard. Why would anyone build something like that? Darius scrolled down the file. More words appeared. Built in Earth's final days. Meant to reset Earth by wiping it clean of all life. A second chance. Project canceled. Too dangerous. Sealed on the moon. The monks turned it into a place of worship, Darius whispered. But it was never holy. It was a cage. Juno pointed at the screen. The Zephyrics, they must know what it is. That's why they're here. Darius nodded again. They believe it's the key to controlling life and death across the galaxy. If they wake it fully, they'll use it on every world they find. The ground shook again. Stronger this time. Dust fell from the ceiling. The lights flickered, then steadied. Owen looked at Darius. We have to stop them. How? Juno asked. We have no weapons left. No soldiers. We're out of time. Darius stared at the screen for a long moment. His mind burned with questions. Could they destroy Silent? Could they shut it down before the aliens controlled it? Or was it already too late? He opened one more file. It showed a diagram of Silent's core. At the center was a control node deep inside the chamber. One access port, one way to shut it down or wake it fully. There's a chance, Darius said. I can override the system from the core. Owen shook his head. You'd have to reach it first. The Zephyrics are already there. Darius looked at them both. His face hard, his voice steady. I'll reach it, one way or another. He turned away from the screen and grabbed a heavy tool from the shelf. A plasma cutter used for breaking through sealed panels. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. We're not running, Darius said. Not this time. He started toward the exit, ready to face what waited in the dark. Silent was waking, and he was running out of time. Darius Cade moved through the dark tunnels of Sanctuary 09, gripping the plasma cutter in his hands. Owen and Juno followed close behind, their steps careful and quiet. They knew the enemy was close. The air felt heavier now, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Above them, the ground shook again. This time it didn't stop. The vibrations were slow, steady, and growing stronger. It felt like the sanctuary itself was waking up, breathing, or maybe even alive. They're breaking through the second seal, Darius whispered to himself. The silent chamber had 3 seals. 2 were already weakening. Only 1 remained. If the final seal broke, Silent would fully awaken. There would be no going back. They reached a service ladder. Darius looked up. The ladder led straight to the upper maintenance level above the chamber. From there, they could enter the control access tunnel. It was the only way to reach Silent's core. We'll go up, then drop down behind them, Darius explained. If we're lucky, they won't see us coming. Owen and Juno nodded. They started climbing. The metal rungs creaked under their weight. Every sound felt too loud in the silent dark. When they reached the top, Darius pushed open the hatch slowly. He peeked out. The upper level was empty. Broken lights hung from the ceiling. Dust filled the air like smoke. They moved quickly along the narrow walkway, keeping low. Below them, through the steel grates, they could see the chamber floor. The Zephyrs were standing in a circle around the sealed door. One of them, taller than the rest, was working on the final lock. Darius recognized the leader. Karel, the Zephyrs leader, moved with slow, perfect control. His black armor reflected the soft light from the glowing seal. His long, sharp fingers tapped on a small device, unlocking lines of alien code. Darius clenched his jaw. Karel was close. Too close. How do we stop them? Owen whispered. Darius pointed toward the control tunnel on the far side of the chamber. We get to the core. I can override the system before they finish. They crawled along the walkway, careful not to make a sound. The walkway ended at a sealed, hatch-marked core access only. Darius typed the security code, praying it still worked. The hatch slid open with a hiss. They slipped inside and began moving down the tight, narrow tunnel. The walls were wet with condensation. The air smelled like burnt metal. How much time do we have? Juno asked. Not much, Darius replied. Once they break the last seal, Silent will wake up fully. They reached the core door. It was locked by an old security panel. Darius used the plasma cutter, slicing through the bolts. Sparks lit up the small space. He kicked the door open. Inside was Silent's heart. The core was massive. A giant sphere floated in the center of the room, surrounded by glowing energy rings. Strange lights moved across its surface like waves of water. The air felt alive, as if something inside the sphere was breathing. Darius stepped toward the control console. His fingers shook as he typed the commands. Lines of old Earth code appeared on the screen. Core ready for manual override. Warning: activation will unlock all systems. Darius paused. One wrong move could wake Silent completely. He had to be sure. Suddenly, the tunnel behind them exploded. The blast knocked them off their feet. Dust filled the air. Darius coughed and looked up. Karel stepped through the smoke, followed by 3 Zephyric soldiers. Their energy blades hummed softly. Too late. Karel spoke for the first time. His voice was cold and sharp like broken glass. You should have left this place to us. Darius stood, raising the plasma cutter like a weapon. You'll never control it, Darius said firmly. Karel tilted his head slightly. We already have. Karel raised his hand. The final seal on the chamber below shattered with a deep, loud crack. The energy rings around the sphere began to spin faster. The core pulsed with bright light. Silent was waking. Owen and Juno stood beside Darius, ready to fight even with nothing left to fight with. Darius made his choice. He ran to the console and slammed his hand down on the override button. Manual override activated, the system announced. The sphere lit up like a star. The air turned hot. A deep hum filled the room, shaking the walls. The lights went out for a second, then came back on brighter than before. Karel stepped back, eyes locked on Darius. What have you done? Karel hissed. Darius stared at the sphere, sweat pouring down his face. I've changed the target, Darius whispered. Silent will only consume you. The energy in the core began to rise. The ground shook like thunder. The final battle had begun. Silent's core rumbled louder, shaking the floor beneath Darius's boots. Lights flickered all around the chamber as the machine stirred to life. The air crackled with energy, thick and hot, like the breath of something ancient waking after centuries of sleep. Karel stood still, watching the energy rings spin faster around the glowing sphere. His soldiers raised their blades, ready to strike, but the ground shifted again, this time with greater force. Darius held his ground, knowing he had triggered something bigger than all of them. Do you understand what you've done? Karel, he said. Darius tightened his grip on the console. I've locked Silent's hunger onto your kind only. It's coming for you. Karel's cold, blank face showed no fear. You think you control it. But Silent is beyond control. It consumes all. You will burn with us. Owen and Juno raised their rifles again, though they both knew the bullets were worthless. Still, they stood beside Darius, ready to fight. Kal-El pointed at Darius and gave a sharp command in the Zephyrix language. His soldiers moved fast, charging toward them with blades glowing bright. Darius grabbed the plasma cutter. He swung it wildly, forcing the first soldier back. Owen fired at the second. The shots bounced off the alien's armor, but it slowed them just long enough. Juno threw herself at the third soldier, tackling it to the ground. She shouted over her shoulder, "Go, Darius! Get to the chamber!" Darius hesitated for a moment, but he knew she was right. He ran toward the emergency ladder at the far end of the core room. The energy from Silent grew stronger with every step. He climbed fast, the metal rungs shaking beneath his hands. He could hear the sounds of fighting below, shouts, metal striking metal, energy blades slicing through air. He reached the top and pushed open the upper hatch. Dust and smoke filled the air, but he didn't stop. He ran through the narrow tunnel toward the silent chamber. When he reached the edge, he stopped and stared. The chamber had changed. The massive sealed door was gone, broken into pieces. Floating above the shattered floor was Silent's true form, a swirling sphere of dark light, pulsing with power. The air around it shimmered, bending like heat waves. The Zephyrix soldiers on the chamber floor stood frozen, looking up in awe. Kal-El stepped through the broken doorway behind them, his black armor glowing faintly from the energy in the air. "Silent," Kal-El whispered softly, as if greeting an old god. Darius stepped out into the open. "It's not yours," he shouted. Kal-El turned toward him slowly. "It belongs to no one," Kal-El replied. "It is the end of all things." Silent began to pulse faster. Thin streams of light reached out, like fingers stretching through the air. The streams touched the nearest Zephyrix soldiers. The moment they made contact, the soldiers froze in place. They didn't scream. They didn't move. Their bodies glowed bright, then turned to dust in seconds. One by one, they fell, crumbling to the ground like ash. Kal-El watched in silence as his soldiers vanished before his eyes. He turned back to Darius, rage finally breaking through his cold mask. "You will die with us." Kal-El roared. He charged toward Darius, blade raised high. Darius ducked, rolling to the side. He grabbed a metal pipe from the wreckage and swung it hard, catching Kal-El in the side. The alien stumbled, but didn't fall. Kal-El swung his blade again. Darius barely dodged, the energy slicing through the air inches from his face. The ground shook harder now. Silent's light filled the entire chamber. More energy streams reached out, seeking their targets. Kal-El lunged again, but this time a stream of light struck him in the back. He stopped mid-step. His body began to glow. He turned to Darius, eyes wide with shock. You cannot." But the light grew brighter, swallowing him whole. Kal-El let out one final breath before his body turned to dust, just like the others. Darius fell to his knees, staring at the empty chamber. The Zephyrix were gone. Silent had done what he told it to do, but the sphere kept pulsing. More streams of light reached out, searching for new targets. Darius stood slowly. His heart pounded. He knew what was happening. He had pointed Silent at the Zephyrix, but Silent was still hungry. It had tasted life again. It would not stop here. "I have to shut it down," Darius whispered. He turned and ran back toward the core room. Owen and Juno were gone. He didn't know if they had survived, but there was no time to look. Silent was growing stronger by the second. Darius reached the console again. He typed fast, searching for the shutdown command. The screen flashed a warning. Shutdown requires full system lockout. One operator must stay connected to maintain lock. Darius froze. If he shut it down, someone had to stay behind. Someone had to link their body to the system. There would be no way out. He stared at the screen. "Damn it," he whispered under his breath. The ground shook again, harder than before. The walls began to crack. Lights burst, sparks flying everywhere. He had no choice. Darius placed his hand on the lockout panel. The system beeped once, twice. "Confirm operator link," the system said. Darius closed his eyes for a moment. He thought of Earth. He thought of the people hiding deeper in the sanctuary. He thought of the monks who had given their lives to keep this thing locked away. He opened his eyes. Confirm, Darius said. Energy he shot through his arm. His body locked in place. Pain burned through him, but he didn't let go. The energy sphere began to dim. The light faded bit by bit. The shaking stopped. Silence hunger slowed. The streams of light vanished. The chamber grew dark and still. Silent had been locked away again, and Darius Cade stood alone in the dark. Darius stood frozen at the console, hands still locked to the glowing panel. His legs felt weak. His heart pounded. His skin burned from the energy running through him. But he didn't let go. He couldn't. The system kept draining power from his body to keep Silent locked down. Sweat dripped from his face. His vision blurred. It felt like his very life was being pulled into the machine. Core lock holding, the system announced. Warning, operator life signs unstable. Darius gritted his teeth and pressed harder. He had made his choice. He had locked Silent on himself. It would stay asleep as long as he held the link. Suddenly, a voice called out from behind him. Darius, stop. It was Juno. She stumbled through the broken tunnel, coughing from the dust and smoke. Her uniform was torn. Blood ran down her arm, but she was alive. Darius shook his head. No, you have to leave. It's the only way. Juno ran to his side, grabbing his free arm. You don't have to die here, she shouted. If I let go, it wakes again, Darius said, his voice weak. I'm a lock now. I can hold it, but only me. Juno's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't stop. There has to be another way, she cried. The ground rumbled softly again. The sphere above them flickered, like a heartbeat slowly returning. Silent was still alive, still waiting. Darius closed his eyes for a moment. He knew the truth. There was no other way. But then he remembered something from the old files. He had seen a line of code, a single backup protocol. He took a deep breath and spoke softly. There is one more thing. Juno leaned closer. What is it? Darius typed one last command with his free hand. The screen showed transfer lock TO remote node. His voice shook as he explained. I can move the lock to the satellite above us. It was part of the old system, but someone has to get there and keep the link alive. Juno nodded without thinking. I'll go. No, Darius said, shaking his head. It's suicide. The station's old. The systems are dead. You'll never make it. Juno grabbed his hand tighter. Let me try. Please. You saved us once. Let me save you. Darius looked at her, knowing the risk. But he also knew they were out of time. He nodded slowly. Go. I'll hold it until you're ready. Juno stood and turned to leave, but Darius called after her. Take Owen if he's still alive. Don't do it alone. Juno gave one final nod and ran back into the tunnel. Darius took another deep breath and tightened his grip on the console. He kept his mind focused. He couldn't afford to pass out now. Time seemed to stretch forever. The lights dimmed again. The system flickered. Operator life signs critical. Core lock holding. Darius felt his legs give out, but he stayed standing by leaning against the console. He whispered under his breath, like a prayer. Come on, Juno, you can do this. Above the moon, in orbit, the old lunar defense station floated in silence. The station had been dead for decades, forgotten by most, but its systems were still linked to Silent, hidden deep in the code. Juno and Owen, bruised and bleeding, made their way to the old launch bay. They found one small shuttle still working. Barely. The engines sputtered as they launched into space, but they didn't stop. Stay with me, Owen, Juno whispered. I'm not leaving, Owen replied weakly. They reached the station after a rough flight. The air was thin. The lights barely worked, but the link panel was still active. Juno rushed to the console and activated the link. Remote node active, the system announced. Back in the chamber, Darius saw the screen flash green. Remote lock ready. Transfer now, the system asked. Darius didn't waste a second. Confirm transfer, he said, his voice breaking. The energy in the room shifted. The sphere dimmed even more. The system released Darius's hand. He collapsed to his knees, gasping for breath. Remote lock engaged. Core stable. Darius lay on the floor, staring up at the dark ceiling. He smiled weakly. They had done it. Silent was locked again. But the cost was not over. Juno, Owen, stay safe up there, he whispered. He knew they would have to stay on that dead station forever, keeping the link alive. It was a lonely future, but they had given humanity another chance. Darius pulled himself to his feet. The chamber was quiet again. The threat was over. For now, he walked through the broken sanctuary, passing the bodies of the fallen. He paused by Elder Varric's staff, now broken on the floor. He picked it up and carried it with him as he made his way to the surface. Above him, the stars shined bright. The moon was silent again. But this time, Darius knew silence could not be trusted. Darius Cade stood at the broken gates of Sanctuary 09. Behind him, the great silent chamber lay in ruins. The ground was cracked. The walls were scorched. The once peaceful halls of worship now looked like a battlefield. The survivors slowly gathered around him. Men, women, and children. Their faces were tired, pale, and frightened. Some held onto each other. Others stood alone, unsure what to do next. None spoke. They all stared at Darius, waiting for answers. Darius felt their eyes on him. He had no words to give them. What could he say? That the danger was over? That they were safe? It would be a lie. He knew better. Silence still existed. It was locked, yes, but it was still alive. It would always be alive, waiting for the next mistake. He looked up at the sky through the broken ceiling. He could see the distant glow of the old lunar defense station orbiting high above. Juno and Owen were up there now, keeping the link alive. Their lives are now tied to the machine they had sworn to keep sealed. Darius knew they had saved everyone, but at a terrible cost. He gripped Elder Varric's broken staff in his hands. The old monk had died, trying to protect the chamber. So had many others. Their sacrifice had bought time, but time alone was not safety. Time was only a pause before the next choice. The crowd slowly began to move. Some started cleaning the debris. Others helped the injured. The people of Sanctuary 09 had lived through the worst night of their lives, but they knew life had to go on. Darius turned and walked to the chamber one last time. He stood at the edge, looking down at the dark, empty core. The sphere was gone, hidden again, but he knew it was still there, locked by the link to the station above. His mind filled with questions. What if someone broke the link? What if another enemy found it? What if the survivors, years from now, grew tired of fear and decided to use it? He knew the answer. This was not the end. It was only another pause. He turned as the new leader of the monks, a young woman named Sister Murray, approached him. She held a small data tablet in her hands. "We've checked the systems," she said softly. "The chamber is stable. But what do we do with it now?" Darius stared into her eyes for a long moment. He could see the fear in them, the same fear everyone carried. "We have two choices," he said. "Seal it again, or destroy it." Sister Murray nodded slowly. "Can it be destroyed?" Darius looked back at the chamber. "I don't know," he admitted, "but we can try. We have to try." Sister Murray looked down at the tablet. "If we fail, then we warn those who come after us," Darius said. "We leave the truth, not lies. No more hiding. No more worship. Just the truth." Sister Murray nodded again, stronger this time. "I will gather the others. We'll begin at once." Darius watched her walk away. He knew the work would take years, maybe longer, but it had to be done. He took one last look at the broken chamber. "We survive," he whispered. "Let's not waste it." He turned and walked away, carrying Elder Varric's staff. His steps were slow but steady. He didn't look back. Above him, the stars kept shining. The future was uncertain, but humanity had one more chance, and this time they would not run from it.